We are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening. Good, sir. How are you?
Good, Blake. You and I were just having a very interesting discussion, and I think it ties in perfectly for the conversation that we're going to have on today's show with our ranking segment, which has always been probably the most heated debates that we've had on this program. I am so excited looking ahead to these final weeks of the season. We're turning the page to November. This is the first weekend for November football. This playoff race, it's getting complicated. There is going to be so much that factors into it. I know that's such a broad talking point to throw out there. There is a lot that's going to happen in these coming weeks that's going to determine this playoff field. And on top of that, like Tuesday, we're getting our first reveal of how the committee is viewing the 12 teams that are in.
I thought you said I was about to. I was like, "Where's he going? What is he saying about?"
Nothing else is happening on that Tuesday.
Yeah, we're not.
Nothing else is important is happening on that Tuesday. Not the election.
Nothing. The only thing on Tuesdays is that you get Ruffino and Joe extra pods. Okay, like that's all that you get. I don't know what you're talking.
I can't wait for all my friends who I have friends who take it very seriously. And they're going to be like, are you paying attention to what's going on? It's like, I'm watching the committee ranking that's being dropped right now. I'm going to look like such a bad citizen.
Vote. Be American and vote.
Yeah, yes, of course.
You're not going to find that here. We say a lot of crazy shit on this show. That's not going to be one of them. All right.
Yeah.
So we do have a very interesting debate that we'll probably somewhat start getting into in these rankings. Joe, there's probably about 5 teams hovering around that 11 spot, not 12, because, the G5 team's going to get that number 12 spot. But there are a lot of teams, and Joe, I got to be real with you. If we're noticing something here, there's a lot of Big Ten, a lot of SEC teams in that thing. A lot.
Well, and as it should be, I think that fans of other.
You have a chance. Rudely interrupt you. You have a chance for both of them to get 5 in almost.
I think realistically it's probably going to be 4, but that's already outperforming just the general vague expectation that a lot of people would have had coming into the season. But if we're being realistic, the conferences that blatantly and not surprisingly have the best teams coming into the year are the Big Ten and the SEC. I still stand by this. I know some people want to project that the chance that the Big 12 puts 2 teams in. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they're going to be lucky to have the 1 in. I think that these coming weeks are going to really dwindle
where
that.
It plays out, though.
You have a undefeated in the 10-1?
No, well, Iowa State and BYU both are undefeated going to a Big 12 championship game. Let's just be honest. I mean, some games have been somewhat close, but like Iowa State has kind of really shown some stuff. So has BYU. Joe, if both of them go in a Big 12 title game, and then it's a 1-loss game. Like I could see from the committee's perspective, hey, you know what we need? We need a mid-plains team in the playoff. Tennessee, LSU, you're out. Iowa State, you just lost, you're in. I could see some goofy shit like that happening.
Well, but it's certainly possible. My only thing in response to that is the way that they've played close to weak opponents, the both of them, I don't have faith that they're both going to finish undefeated.
Are we talking about Iowa State or Miami?
BYU and very different. You see
my logic of how the
no. They're very different because Miami offensively is producing the most yards out of any team in the country. Iowa State and BYU
blowing everybody out.
Yeah, but they're not doing it the same way that Miami is. They're winning games and they're playing well,
I get that. But at the end of the day, one team is blowing out the other. It doesn't matter how it looks. Joe, they got to be doing it some kind of way. Oh, that's right. They lead the country in turnovers. They are turnover machines. You got to trust in the Mormons. You have no faith in the Mormons. That's what's going on.
Turnover luck dies out after a certain amount of time.
Unless it doesn't. Joe, they're going on a, what is this week? I mean, this would be an 8th, 9th game, whatever it would be. Or 8th game. It's going 8 straight weeks. There have been teams that have just been able to really do it.
I get that. I can't get fully all the way there. Did you also see though today?
Let me give an example.
Okay.
I saw Georgia going like a 24-game streak with hold on.
But Georgia's not BYU, though.
With at least one. Okay, no, I get that.
Okay.
But, I mean, let's not act like that teams that have been there at the end, there was one massive thing that they all have in common. What is it? Joe, they can
play
run
good.
the
They play
football
good
effectively,
defense,
and they turn the football over. That. Joe, think of the team. Hold on one second. Think of the teams that legitimately that have come out of nowhere. One thing that you got to give Washington, as much as their defense was bad, at times they could run the football and they were turnover machines. That's why their turnover margin was ridiculous.
But we both know that the talent level and the quality of play, there's a pretty big gap between what teams like Washington, like Michigan, like Georgia that could fit in this Texas, those types of teams. They were far more talented than BYU and Iowa State. They're both. And Pitt's another one of those teams too that fits in this conversation.
I can't believe I'm the one with this take when you were the big TCU fan a couple of years ago.
Well, it did, but it did run out for them. It ran out for them in the Big 12 championship game.
Well, that's true. No, they had a lot of turnovers in that game. There was Sam Duggan, who was Max Duggan, pop, lock, and dropping it. Tough guy, though.
Just a final thought, though, before we get ready.
Yeah, we got to get rolling.
But the only thing I'm throwing in there, did you see that the committee said today that they're going to not avoid rematches, which I don't know how I feel about. I think it's fine. I'd rather they stick with that than manipulate the system.
I want you to expound on this. I got a conspiracy theory. You ready?
Okay.
They are saying that because of what we just talked about a minute ago, that they're about to put in a lot of Big Ten and SEC teams, and they're going to unjustifiably do it. So that's how I read it. I'm like,
that makes sense.
Basically, what you're saying is you're going to go by eye test. Joe, last week they came out with a statement saying we're going by eye test. Okay, just tell me that you're going to do everything you can to get Big Ten and SEC teams in there. Thank you.
Yeah.
No,
that's a great way to look at it, that they're already trying to save themselves a little bit of space here by pushing the narrative like, hey, we're just going with who we think's the best.
I mean, come on. Look, I might have been born at night. I was not born last night. Stop. No. So these guys are very uncreative in how they do things. Come on. It's College Football Playoff Committee. Let's get rolling. So, Joe, we'll get into our power rankings. We'll give our Week 10 picks, and then we'll come back and we'll do our Heisman week take 2. Travis Hunter again tends to reemerge, so we'll get to that. All right, Let's get rolling. Everybody do us a favor. Hit the like and share. Share to all those groups, all those social media pages. Do us a favor. Subscribe. Hit that notification bell, and wherever you're listening to us on podcast, rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline. We'll come back. We'll do our power rankings next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag.
We're back.
All right. Joe, our power rankings, Week 10. Here is yours, and you got an interesting pick at number 10. Tell us your 1 through 10.
So I've got on my top 10 here, Blake. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Oregon. Number 3, Miami. Number 4, Penn State. Number 5, Ohio State. Number 6, Texas A&M. Number 7, Clemson. Number 8, Texas. 9, Indiana. And 10, I give up. Just put anyone there. It doesn't matter. You could put Notre Dame there. You could put LSU. You could put Alabama. You could put Tennessee. Anybody can Iowa State, BYU. There are so many teams, and I'm tired of guessing. I'll probably put somebody there next week, Blake, but this is my 1 week of just saying anybody belongs there. There's too many teams to make a definitive decision.
Again, I'm going to come back at you with one thing. I just don't understand why you have Tennessee out.
Because I don't think that Tennessee they have played halves of good games. Like I can't get all the way in there on Tennessee. Like they haven't played.
But you can on Indiana?
But yes, I can count on Indiana. They won handily with their backup quarterback again.
I mean, with all due respect. All right,
here we go.
The Bama win alone. Alone.
But I'm not ranking these by wins. I'm not ranking this based on resume. I'm ranking this based on eye test. I'm doing this off of eye test.
Okay. Even with the eye test, you can't win this argument with eye test. You can't win this argument with anything else because one team went out there and physically imposed a lot of NFL players defensively.
They didn't physically impose. It took
Dylan Sampson had 145 yards on the ground.
He had a great game, but Alabama playing themselves out of that game was a big reason why Tennessee was able to win it. They had chances to get back and win that football game. My problem is, and why I'm unwilling to put them in the top 10, and I think they fit better in that smaller bucket, Blake, is that I think Tennessee has proven to me that they're inconsistent. When have they been dominant? Like, when have they been, like, truly dominant, except for that beginning stretch of the season when they kicked the crap out of a bunch of G5 teams and FCS programs?
But to me, this will always be, when you play teams, like if you're in the Big Ten, like they are, like if they would have knocked off one of these big boys, right? Like if they would have knocked off the talent level of a Bama, okay? I would have been like, well, okay, all right. And not only are you undefeated, you're right. All right. You're right.
They can't help who they're playing. Why am I holding that against them?
That's my point. The only team that they're going to get, I don't want to say tested by, but the only big boy in the sport that they play is Ohio State. Tennessee went up toe-to-toe with one of them and smacked them in the mouth, Joe.
But I just don't understand where you're getting this description of that game against Bama as smacking them in the mouth. I didn't
ran for 200 yards in the second half. That's why.
They did enough to win with a team that was shooting themselves in the foot. I don't think that truly signifies dominance to me. Why would I not pick the team, Blake, that has throughout the entirety of the season blown out everybody they played against? And they won by multiple scores with a backup quarterback in.
Joe, if you scored 24 points and a half, is that dominating your opponent?
I think that is no. I'm not going to agree that. I think that is very loose, just like in very specific example to try and paint this art. You're using one instance. Again, this is part of the problem where all we're using is that one half that they played against Alabama. That's not enough.
Yeah,
I have the whole season of undefeated play.
It's enough when you compare two teams, okay, and one is dominating or one's winning against a bigger, better opponent. And I think that you know that.
I'm not going to admit that I agree with that.
And let me tell you this. Indiana, we would be talking about Indiana like we did with Michigan last year, in a sense. Okay? Because we would say we have
but that's all the more reason to invest in a team that's dominating everybody the way that they are.
Okay. But we all perceived because of Miami, you're right. Because of Michigan, that they've been in the playoff last year. We had them up there early in the rankings. Okay. But there is a talent level difference here. There's going to be a talent level difference when they play Ohio State. You know that, and I know that. There is. So you just got done talking about the talent level evaluation before we got into this segment. Okay, our eye test can see that one team has been better than the other. We know the athletes that's in there. All right. Well, if you're going to use that logic, you're right. I can see that in Indiana. I can see that. Like there's a difference in the caliber of athlete on the defensive line at Tennessee versus Indiana. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. So when you start getting down to trench work, I'm going to lean with guys like James Pierce, who've gone up against guys like Tyler Booker, who might be the best guard in the game, and dominated him for a half. You get what I'm saying?
Wait, hold on. No, but I don't get what you're saying, because you're taking what I'm talking about here with the eye test, and you're being very specific with it. Like, you're being really, really specific with it.
That's the point of winning the debate.
No, because but you're right. You're trying to move the argument in a different direction. The whole point here is that Indiana, again, for we know that Tennessee is the better roster. We both know that Tennessee is the more talented players. They have more draft prospects, 1,000%. One team has played around with their opponents and played close to their opponents, and also got upset by a team that they should not have lost to. And the other, in any opportunity where they could have slipped up, they have dominated. They have won handedly against everybody that they've played. We're not going off of 4 games, Blake. We're going off of 8. 8 with a backup quarterback in the last game and a half.
Against whom?
There's not as big of a gap between the Big Ten and the SEC as you want to claim that there is. There isn't. And that's the debate that we keep having with
Joe. I'm going to be real with you. There's a difference in Mississippi State versus UCLA. It's a massive difference. When Mississippi, Vandy, Joe, coming into the season, hold on.
Vandy's a top half team in the SEC this year.
Okay, so what would they be ranked around in the Big Ten?
In the top half. That's the highest I'd put them.
They're not in the top half of the SEC, Vandy, right now. They're not. Joe, there's 8 teams in the SEC out of the 16 that are vying for playoff spots right now.
They're at 8 or not. They were just ranked.
Yeah, I know.
And they just played close with Texas.
8 SEC teams were ranked, and they were the 8th SEC team.
So they're still deserving to be at that 8th spot.
No, they lost last week. Anyway, can I get to my top 10?
Yeah, go ahead. You started this.
10. Okay. Georgia, number 1. Oregon, number 2. Ohio State, number 3. Miami, number 4. Penn State, number 5. Texas, 6. A&M, 7. There they are. Tennessee, number 8. Alabama, number 9. And Indiana, number 10.
Texas should be lower. I think that Texas. Wait, let me pull yours back up really quickly. I think that Texas A&M should be ranked ahead of Texas. That's the big difference that we have on here. I think that the performance that Texas A&M had last week is indicative of that.
I don't hate that.
Okay.
I see the logic. I wouldn't have hate putting them at 6 and Texas at 7. But what are the losses? When are the losses? I know what you're saying. But again, I still think Georgia's better than people are giving them credit for. Like, they look at the loss and they don't realize, like, all right, well, you know what? Here's the truth. Texas was up on them big. Georgia was up on them big. We all know that. Okay? Georgia really didn't get much going in the second half, and Texas hung around with them in the first half. They just turnovers, not able to complete passes. Ewers was bad. Look, a 15-point loss to me is not it's not created equally at the current moment. Like, I could still, my eye test can still look at Texas and say, you know what, man, that front seven was still pretty good. Like, they didn't get any help in the first half by their offense, none whatsoever. They gave 4 sacks, Joe, in the first half, wasn't it? Yeah, because Walker had 2 sacks in the first half. So it's created differently for me. The A&M thing, I'm with you. But here's the thing that I would push back just a little bit on. It's interesting. What quarterback room do you trust more? Because both of them are.
I obviously trust the Texas one more.
Okay, so with that being said, let's just say hypothetically A&M or Marcel Reed struggles this week the way that Connor Wigman did last week, and they're going back and forth. It's about who's not struggling for A&M. Okay, we've seen Arch and we have seen Ewers for what it's worth. Look, man, Quinn Ewers is still a playoff quarterback at this current moment. He still went to the playoff last year. So I know what you're saying. I get it. I don't hate it. But A&M can make just as much of a point here. Last thing, just to clarify here, A&M can make the point that, look, game 1 under a first-year head coach, we lost to a top 12 opponent. Ever since then, we've won every single game, and we just had a dominating win versus a top 10 opponent in LSU. Very fair. A&M massively does have a bigger win, against an opponent. The problem is even in Texas's loss, my eyes could see in the first half that the trench work was pretty serious. Like, both teams have dudes.
I think my biggest point with this is that we had really bad performance against Georgia. Texas fans need to be realistic with themselves. They did not play good in that game
at all.
And I feel like there's a lot of excuses being made for Texas for the way that they played against Vandy. I didn't think they played horrible, but they're not playing at this dominant top 5 clip that everyone thought that they were going to play at the beginning of the year. They still feel like the Texas team from last year, where they were the best team in the Big 12. They don't feel like a top 2-3 team in the SEC.
I will say this, though, Joe. Again, because when I look at you, I have to see this guy behind me, and it continues to remind me of this. Dominant teams have had 3-point wins against mid-level opponents. Like, we've seen that. You know, like, for example, the Miami team in 2001, Joe, I think they won by, 19-14 over Boston College. Like, they had a really bad game. Like the 19 LSU team.
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, so what do we – if Vandy's the mid-level of the SEC, as me and you just argued about, okay, well, we've seen great all-time teams that, have one of those.
Right, and to clarify here, like, I'm not knocking them to the degree where I say they're missing the playoff, take them out of the top 10, they're terrible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm merely just stating they've taken a slight step back, like an inch of a step back. Not a huge step back. They're not going all the way backwards. They're not falling down the stairs. They just regressed slightly, and there's plenty of time in this final month for them to get back on track and to finish the year strong. And I certainly think it's possible for them, by the time the season ends, as everybody can get better on a weekly basis, that they could beat Texas A&M. I think it's probable with the way that momentum could flow for them. But at the current moment, after what we saw with the way that Texas A&M played at home against LSU, and the way that Texas has played in their last 2 games, I feel like Texas A&M, that version of them from last week, is better than the current version of Texas.
Let's not act like, too, that they don't have a 4-point loss. I mean, a 4-point win, to Arkansas. You get what I'm saying?
And they barely beat. Yeah, they kind of played around Bowling Green too.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, you're making all this, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, look, man, if I'm a Texas fan, I'm just thinking, Bowling Green, I'm screaming in the background, Bowling Green. I get what you're saying. I'm not trying to disagree the point here. I just, like, it doesn't matter to me, right? Like, it does. Pick one up, put one down. I don't care. I really, really don't care. Okay, let's look at yours. Joe, we do have, in yours, we have a 4 versus 5 matchup this weekend. And in mine, we have a 3 versus 5 matchup. Look, I kind of want to get to Ohio State here, if you don't mind. Joe, what's the narrative going to be coming out of this game if Ohio State loses?
I think that the biggest talking point should be there's going to be a lot of overreaction. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people saying, fire Ryan Day, he couldn't get the job done, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is going to creep up. But I think we need to be smart and contextualize what could go wrong. As we talked about in the preview, and it's spoiler my picks and also the rankings the way that I have them, if these two faced off today, I'm picking Penn State, and it's because of the offensive line injuries that have caught up to them. They're down 2 left tackles. They're not down just like one guy or 2 guys at different spots. They're down bad at left tackle specifically, and it is requiring them to shuffle and move players around, going up against a team with Abdul Carter, who could very well be the first overall pick, or at least the first defender drafted in the upcoming draft. Mm-hmm. So with all that in mind, and with what we're talking about here, if they lose, I think we just need to be smart enough to say, hey, they're dealing with injuries. There's plenty of time before the season finishes for them to finish with 2 losses, go to the playoff, get a little bit healthier, and they're not going to get Simmons back, but get a little bit healthier to the degree that they could go on a playoff run. But I think that there's going to be a lot of overreaction. I'm not ready to go there yet. I wouldn't take them out of my top 10 if they lost. Maybe that's
they'd have a loss to the number 1 team and what would probably be the number 2 or number 3 team.
They'd have the 2 best. This sounds so defeatist. Yeah. They'd have the 2 best losses in all of college football.
Oh, Without a doubt. But, I mean, the same thing is, you know who we would be labeling them as?
Who?
The new Penn State. So
well, but the thing is,
you're playing two big boys.
Yeah.
Rhonda, hey, you're playing these big boys and you're losing. I mean, that's exactly what Penn State does. I mean, they're going to beat everybody else.
Their win would be over Indiana, which would be a ranked Big Ten team that's beatable.
Yeah, I mean, look. I mean, as much as we clowned on Ohio State's schedule, okay, early in the year, they're the ones playing the more interesting games at the current moment. So, yet here we are again with Ohio State and Penn State. So, yeah, and you're pretty much right. That's why I picked Ohio State over Penn State in that situation too. All right, thoughts? What team you want to get to here next? I know you probably want to get to Bama because I have them at 9.
Well, we just shouted about Tennessee in Indiana again 2 weeks in a row. So you moved Georgia up this week. You decided to go with Georgia number 1?
Yeah, I put Georgia as the number 1 team in the country for me.
Okay, would you
I
like
know
to
that they were on a bye week.
Context
nothing Oregon did or didn't do. I mean, they still dominated. I think that like you just mentioned, okay, Joe, I went back and watched that Texas film or to the Texas game this weekend. It's a different beast. Like what I saw defensively is a different beast. And so now I'm just kind of starting to think like, hey, who would I go with today? Oregon versus Georgia in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Who am I going with? Joe, I'm going with Georgia. You know, like as much as I think Oregon has dominated, Oregon looks great. But if you're going based off of like, hey, Blake, who would you pick today? Oregon versus Georgia. I'm just going to be real with you. I'm going with Georgia because I do feel as if, okay, for what it's worth, that they made a really good offensive line look very bad. Kelvin Banks does not suck. He does not suck. He gave up 3 sacks. Joe, he had not given up a sack in a year and a half, and then he gave up 3 because there was a different intensity. There was a different type of thing going on with Georgia a couple of nights ago. You're talking about the second tackle off the board in the NFL legitimately was getting whooped all night long by a really good defender. So, again, if you want to, I don't want to be a hypocrite in the sense of if Georgia and Oregon were supposed to play today, who am I going with? Well, I go with Georgia because I just think defensively that they showed me what I knew they always had, even though people doubted them.
For me, I had this way last week. It's 1A, 1B for me at the current moment. If Georgia hadn't lost to Alabama, it'd be 1-2. They did show some signs of weakness, and that sign of weakness is overthinking play calling. It's not a talent issue. And it's also lack of depth on their offensive line because Ratledge goes down, and it feels like without him, their run game's not as effective. But with him in, we know that they can really pave things on the ground. It's a very nitpicky issue that they're dealing with. I think it'd be really close if they squared off with one another. And I also think that like right now at the current moment, especially with the way that things are shaping up with Ohio State and their injury problems on their O-line that I keep coming back to, I really think that we are on a trajectory that it's going to be Oregon versus Georgia in this national championship game.
And it very well may be.
Yeah.
It very well may be. Are you picking Oregon today?
What do you mean?
Georgia and Oregon play this Saturday. Who are you picking?
I'd pick Georgia. As much as I really love Oregon, I think that Georgia, just the coaching staff experience, wins out late in the fourth quarter. I don't think
Kirby beats the undermine. He starts Nick Saban. He starts Nick Saban in his former assistants.
Well, right. And that's the funniest part to think about with all this. They avoid each other because they're not in the same part of the country. But you're right. Nick Saban always had Kirby, and Kirby's always going to have Dan Lanning. Yeah, I think that's 1,000% one thing to consider here, and it's part of my whole argument where I got to go with the more slightly established coaching staff.
I got to get me too. All right, I got to get to this. Lord Venomous says Oregon media team going to clip that. I thought that was pretty.
Oh no, please don't.
Yeah, they probably will. Joe, I want to bring him up again because we're not talking about him. Okay. I made a big mistake in my power rankings.
Okay,
Massive
elaborate.
mistake. I didn't have Clemson in there.
Oh, you just so now it makes sense because you texted me earlier your list and you went 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You just skipped 5, and I was like, well, what team did you want there? And you asked me to put it. So you were telling me that you would have Clemson in there over Indiana.
I would have Clemson in there over Indiana. But
see, I hate that. I really don't like that.
Well, since we're getting to it, let's talk about little old Clemson. Joe, nobody's talking about it, man. Again, they're continuing to win. Look, here's the thing I think is going on with Clemson. Dabo's loving every single thing about this. Not playing big games, dominating these games. I mean, he is loving this. Joe, from a national perspective, Clemson's not being talked about. Blake, they got blown out by Georgia. You're damn right they got blown out by Georgia. But the bottom line is they keep winning. They just continue to win.
So they were in my top 10. And my one thing, I guess this is criticism to that take, which is ironic because I ranked them and you didn't.
On accident. On
accident. I know that you're a Dabo lover.
I am not a Dabo lover.
Yes, you are. You're a Dabo apologist. It's okay. Every show's got to have one.
Joe, he might win the conference. I said, don't fire him. He might win it.
Yeah, you're a Dabo lover. It's okay. We get
okay.
it. What I was going to say though, how different is it from what Indiana's doing though so far this season, which is dominating all the mid-tier and back-end Big Ten teams, and what Clemson's doing? If Clemson didn't play Georgia, they'd be undefeated right now, and they would be doing the same exact thing where they'd be just kicking the crap out of a bad conference and building up a good resume. And I would argue the middle and the back end of the Big Ten is far harder of a schedule than the middle and the back end of the ACC.
I want to just throw this out there.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull this up.
Okay.
You're right. They did play Georgia in the beginning of the year. Okay. The problem with the logic to some extent is there really is none. But when you look at Clemson, Joe, did you ever think that there was going to be a situation where Clemson offensively was doing what they're doing?
No, and that was my biggest worry. So that's why I've been willing to rank them and why I personally would rank Clemson over Tennessee and over Alabama. SEC lovers, quiet down. That's not at you. That's just at people that are going to jump in the comments saying that Clemson hasn't played anyone. Their offense and Cade Klubnik's performance has been extremely commendable, and it deserves to be recognized. They're dominating teams because Klubnik is playing the best football that we've seen from him. And he's looking good enough to maybe not this year, but the following year to eventually be a first-round pick. That offense, they were sputtering a lot last year. Like they came out of their early stretch of games, and then they were just falling flat on their face every single week. They're not doing that anymore. They are throwing up points in bunches. And Maffa and him are playing off one another, and Garrett Riley's calling some great games. I am just curious, though. They're going to go to the playoff. I think that they will go to the playoff. If they go up against another team with a pulse of a defense, how do they look? How do they look when it's not?
Do they revert back to week one?
Right.
Correct.
Right.
So, and they could go in the playoff and get blown out. I mean, who knows? I mean, you're right. Well, Clemson. All right. Let's get to week 10 picks here. Joe, we've arrived. Week 10 is here. The standings look so beautiful to me. Your boy is 66-24. You are 64-26. We actually, for once, have some disagreements this week.
Finally,
The Rock has come back. Anyway, let's start off here. Miami versus Duke. We're both taking the Canes here.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Miami fans are very mad at me.
Which I literally cut you off, and I was like, I'm trying to save you here. Don't dig yourself into this hole, but you did. I really think that Miami, this is not the game that if they get caught up, it won't be against Duke. Duke does not have enough going for them offensively to get into a shootout. It would require a meltdown for Miami to lose this game.
again, just to reemphasize what I said, you cannot continue to have games. What about Florida State? Okay, let's scratch Florida State, who's a 1-7 football team right now. I'm not talking about Florida State, and y'all know that y'all shouldn't be talking about that either. The bottom line is, Joe, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, you're right. Duke is not going to be the week. I picked Miami too. But let's be real, okay? The God's honest truth is, all right, they got to stop letting up explosive plays too. So the next time we could see Clemson, we just got done talking about Clemson just a minute ago. Well, how does their offense look? Well, Joe, I mean, if they let up explosive plays, Miami could be in trouble. If you're going to give them explosive plays, they can be in trouble. So, again, we'll see. All right, let's get to the next one here. Georgia versus Florida. We're both going with the Bulldogs.
I might regret this, but I put a bet down. This isn't one of my picks that I'm giving out this week. I think Georgia's going to cover here, man. Like, I really do. Freshman quarterback going up against a rival team? No, this does not set up a good situation for Florida. Mm-hmm. I mentioned this. I do see and understand that Lagway has looked good. He hasn't been great. He's been up and down, but he makes some big plays. This is blood in the water type of a situation. Georgia's going to kill him. I think the line I got it at was like 16.
16 and a half.
Yeah, I would take him to cover.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't think that Florida is as bad as people say that they like.
Right.
I don't.
They're not the worst team in the SEC, but they're not supposed to be as bad as they are at the current.
But here's the thing, though, too, Joe, and I'm with you. So let's talk about the games they've lost. You ready? The games they've lost so far. Okay, they have lost to Tennessee, they have lost to Texas A&M, and they have lost to Miami. So they're the only team in the country that's faced 3 top 10 opponents.
Well, the problem is the way that they've looked in all of those losses. They look strong in their wins, but all their losses, man, they're just getting
I get it. I get it. But see, think about this, okay? Just as an example, what would Florida be against Clemson's schedule?
That's a good point, but what's the point of making that?
The point I'm just trying to make here is I think people are like, Florida sucks. They're not any good. Schedule is a big part of this. Like context has got to matter with Florida. If Georgia does cover when they cover, I think that it needs to go a little bit better than what it looks like on paper. Joe, Texas A&M versus South Carolina. Dude, I got to be real with you. Very close to picking South Carolina this week. I came very, very, very close. But I do think that A&M goes up to South Carolina and wins it.
I think this game could be reminiscent of the performance that Ole Miss had against South Carolina. I get it that the South Carolina team does have the defense to completely take over, but I just don't see a way that Texas A&M's front seven and their front, which we last week mistakenly were questioning if they were legit or not. They were legit. They played a good game. They shut down the run, but more importantly, they demolished Missouri. And South Carolina's offensive line is worse than that Missouri offensive line. I think it's going to be really tough sledding. This would require, in my eyes, the type of a game where South Carolina completely out schemes them. And that they don't have the coaching staff to do that. They've never had the coaching staff to do that. They've won games and they played good at the start of the season and hung in with teams because of turnover luck and because of pure talent on their defensive line. It's not enough in my eyes to win.
Last time they had a night game on Halloween week, they beat Tennessee.
Yeah, but they also had the plays, remember? Didn't we find that out in the whole Connor Stalions thing?
I mean, that was let's just say that never was
Beaver
confirmed.
Beaver can't do shit unless he's got the play calls.
Okay, stop. Hand. You can't confirm that. So that's got to be thrown out of the
Allegedly.
Okay. I get what you're saying. I'm going to be real with you. The Spencer Rattler team that beat them defensively, that's what scares me more. It should scare you if you're an A&M fan. It really.
But I would argue that Spencer Rattler led team they put 1,000,000 points up on them. That offense.
Do you remember how
better.
bad that Rattler offensive line was? Remember how bad it was?
It's not. It wasn't worse than the current. This one is literally the statistical worst in the country.
Yo, they broke a record, an NCAA record in giving up sacks on Rattler that year.
I don't know about that.
Yes, they did. Go look it up. Maybe an SEC record. Look up SEC and NCAA.
I don't know if I can find the SEC one that easily. What is the record for sacks allowed?
Now we're just sitting here killing time.
All right, go, dude. Go on to the next game.
Let's just act like it did. How about this? Correct us if I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's SEC. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, it's irrelevant to the point. We both picked A&M. Ohio State versus Penn State. Joe, I'm going with the Buckeyes. You're going with Penn State.
Yeah, I think that, as I've alluded to, I got to stop saying that when I lead into these picks. The issues at offensive line when these teams are potentially evenly matched, and I know Ohio State's more talented. Their secondary is more talented. They've got athletes everywhere. But when you're starting to slow down to the degree that Ohio State has, coming out of the bye, playing the way they did against Nebraska, showing signs of truly being human, I got to go with the team that has the really good defensive line going up against a team dealing with offensive line issues. They're well coached enough to find a way to exploit that. At home, I think that Kotelnicki finds a way to pull it off. If Prabula starts, though, I'm not going to change my pick. I'll stick with it. But I think that they lose if Prabula starts and Ohio State wins.
I'm going with the evidence that I have right now. Right? Like, I mean, I am. Like, I am. I don't know what Aller's going to be like. I mean, he set out for a half. I don't know if he's going to go. I don't know any of that. I do think that they're going to figure out something out at left tackle. I think that they're going to be okay. I think they're still good up some stuff.
Game though.
Yeah, but Joe, when you have look, I'm not going to say what I know because I have a pretty strong connection there. Okay. I'm not going to do that. I can't do that because I don't know if I can or can't say what I think is going to happen here. I think they're going to be okay. However, to your point, you're talking about Prabula going, if Ohio State cannot run the football anywhere effectively, like at all, I mean, they're going to have issues. They will have massive issues. So yeah. I don't have a lot of faith in the Ohio State pick. I'm just leaning on, I think that they're going to get it done. I need to see look, man, I've been a Penn State homer for a long time. Remember, we come in these picks, I pick Penn State. I'm like, this is the year. This is the team. This is the game. And then Michigan runs 47 straight times and beats them. I can't do it again. I literally cannot do it again.
Don't fall for it.
No, it's just not going to be it. Oregon versus Michigan, and both of us going with the Ducks.
Yeah, Oregon's unstoppable at the current moment. I do not think that, even though Michigan fans are commenting like, we're going to get them. No, you're not. Oregon's going to win this.
Yeah, I mean, here's the only thing. Here's what I thought about this game the whole time. What do we look at with the travel? I understand they've done it before, but I feel like at some point that catches up to you. It's caught up to everybody else besides Oregon at the current moment when these Midwest and West Coast teams have played, right? Like, I mean, will it catch up to you? I don't know, but it's not going to be this week because I don't trust anything that Michigan's doing right now. No. I just think that they're rebuilding. Joe, they got talent across this is what a normal rebuild looks like. Like, hey, man, after a national title, we got to rebuild it. Complete and utter rebuild for them. I just can't see Oregon losing him. All right. SMU versus Pitt. Joe, both of these teams are still just hanging around in the ACC, but both of us going with the Mustangs.
I just slightly lean SMU in this situation. I think it could go either way. I slightly lean SMU because I think that their run game could take over, and Kevin Jennings could have a big game. So that's my big reasoning there. I might end up regretting it, and Holstein might end up going off. This one I have no pulse on. It could go either way.
He very will. But look, SMU has not been bad throwing the football. I mean, Joe, you got to look at them. They're 56th I mean, versus the 111th pass defense. Now, well, Blake, we picked off McCord, what was it, 5 times? I get all that. But everywhere else, you've been very bad. You're giving up a lot of yardage. Okay? You got to show up more than one game to me. That's why I'm going with the Mustangs too, Joe. Indiana versus Michigan State. Both of us going with Indiana here.
Yeah, riding the wave. I don't know what's happening with Curtis Rourke. It sounds like there's a hope that he plays, but I got to continue to ride what Indiana's putting out there. Michigan State, too young, too green in this process for them to be the upset squad.
The new head coach of the Florida Gators, Kurt Cignetti, is going to get it done this week.
There's no way that he's going to do that.
He's
He's 63. I just don't know why he would sign up for that.
Why would he sign up for Indiana?
It's low pressure? Lower pressure? I don't know.
I mean, he was at his press conference saying, I win everywhere I go. Google me. I don't think the man's
That's true. He is a big swinging dick sometimes with the way that he talks. It's a very good point, but I just don't know why you'd want to step into that messy situation at Florida. If I'm him.
Dude, could you imagine if every coach wants to test their hand in the SEC. So we'll see. We'll see. But that's who hold on very quickly. If you go to Florida big boards, like our good friend Joy, she's over the message board genius, and like, we want the SIG. People in Florida, you got to specify what SIG they want. Kurt Cignetti or an actual cigarette and jorts. Just saying. Just saying. All right. Ole Miss versus Arkansas. This is your big upset of the week here. Arkansas taking down Ole Miss.
Yeah, I'm taking the upset. Ole Miss, they are not playing to the level that I think any of us expected. They seem like that they are a step behind and they're not fully locked in. The Oklahoma game scares me with how close that game was at halftime until they pulled away at the very end. I think that rushing attack for Arkansas could not have a big day, but help them win the football game.
You know what we do as fans? Let me tell you what we do as fans really quickly.
What?
We always, when we have high expectations for teams and they don't meet our expectations, we move them down. And we thought Arkansas was going to be one of the dead last teams in the SEC. And so now that they're not, we're kind of moving them up. And I mean, Ole Miss has had struggles, but so has Arkansas. I mean, I am not going to let that Mississippi State completely
true. That's true.
I'm not going to let it completely affect me enough. I got to see Arkansas do it. So remember, Joe, in the beginning of the season, I picked Oklahoma State to beat Arkansas. Like, hey, man, I see the talent. I see that you can be good. But then I know that your offense is top 10 in the country in total offense. I see what's going on. But, Joe, the games that they lose, they'll go in here and turn the ball over in critical situations. I mean, they will. And Pete Golden is a master at getting after quarterbacks, man. He just is. Look at him. They're, top 3 in sacks, top 10 in sacks? I know for sure they're top 10 in sacks. Actually,
yeah.
No, I don't have that one. They're top 10 in sacks. So, I mean, I just got to go with the more talent. And I got to be real with you. I feel like I got to go with the better overall coaching staff. And that doesn't change at Ole Miss for me. So give me Ole Miss here. All right. Vandy versus Auburn. This was my game time decision of the week. Joe, you pick, so I'll let you go. You're taking Vandy, though.
Yeah, I'm taking Vandy. I think that Vandy, even though they lost a close game against Texas, they still are a high floor team, which feels weird to say because they've played like crap against some really bad teams. It's kind of funny to acknowledge Hugh Freeze's arch enemy is Diego Pavia.
Pavia.
So, yeah. Was it Pavia or Pavia? I don't know.
Pavia.
Regardless, I think that he is going to pull things out for the Commodores.
I'm going to go with Vandy too, because Diego Pavia owns Auburn.
He does.
And here's the thing, man. The last time you and I picked Auburn, I see what you're doing, but you're like Arkansas. You turn the ball over too much. Yeah. I'm going to be with you. Give me Vandy too here. Give me Vandy. All right. Last one here. We got Wisconsin versus Iowa. Another game we disagree with here. I'm going with Iowa. You're going with Wisconsin.
I just think that Wisconsin showed us that they've got a strong defense. They've got a pretty good run game with Tyree Walker. I think that they can do enough to close that thing out. And offensively, Iowa's been a mess. They've been so inconsistent this year.
Got a quarterback change, kind of been a little bit different for them.
I still think that they're going to get that job done. Wisconsin's going to win this game.
You say all that, and then the backup quarterback comes in last week and smacks your ass, dude. I mean, he bends you over and smacks you around.
That's one game. And wasn't it against Northwestern?
No, I'm.
You're talking about Penn State comes in.
Yeah,
but Penn State's a much different situation than going up against Iowa.
I can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't pick Wisconsin. Right. I swear to God, I will come if they lose me this game to lose me the lead. I swear to God, I'm coming out here and saying fire Kirk Ferentz. I will do a whole segment on this show by myself saying
I'm going to hold you to that if you're saying you're doing that.
Don't you lose me the lead here, Kurt. All right. Joe, let's wrap this up here and get to one final topic. So last week you and I talked about our 3 Heisman contenders, but tonight we're going to get back take 2 of who we think is leading in the Heisman race. But we're going to talk about a guy named Travis Hunter who had a big week or who's had a big season so far. Had 9 catches, I think, what was it, last week or this week? Whichever one, they exploded, 9 catches, 150 yards. Absolutely fantastic. It was last week because they're on the bye week this week. By the way, did you know that you could practice in the bye week? Colorado's the only team that does that, apparently. Anywho, we're going to do take 2 here. How do you see the Heisman pictures starting to shape up even with a guy like Travis Hunter, who it would be very unique because not a lot of quarterbacks are being talked about?
Yeah, there's not a lot of quarterbacks to go with, and I have 2 guys I want to bring up in a second, but I think Travis Hunter's return last week and having such a big role in the big win that they had over Cincinnati re-enters him to that number 2 spot over Cam Ward. I'm still very high on Cam Ward. I think that there is still a narrative that if they go undefeated that he could win the award. I do feel like Travis Hunter, as long as he finishes and stays healthy, should lead the conversation. Like he should be the guy at the front of the list. I don't know if Jeanty starts to slow down at all. I have no idea if he's going to slow down and if there's ever going to come
balls. He won't get five balls.
That's part of it with me is that I think he's going to finish the year with just unbelievable stats. I don't think he's going to break Barry Sanders' record just because it's such a crazy record that he broke and he was such an unreal talent. But at the same time, like you're talking about here, we're going to spend so much more time focused on, and the national landscape is going to give so much attention to Travis Hunter and to Cam Ward. I would just like to throw in there, it needs to be brought up 2 guys, one guy specifically that has played himself into the conversation over the past couple of weeks, who we've mentioned before, Dylan Gabriel of Oregon. He's second in the country in completion percentage with 76%, 9.4 yards per attempt. So he's not just dinking and dunking. He's got 2,300 yards. And he has an 18-5 touchdown interception ratio. Somebody that we didn't bring up the previous week that I just want to put on the table that if he comes back from his injury and starts to play good and finishes the year, I think he could be a finalist. That's Curtis Rourke at Indiana, who I didn't even truly rationalize like how good his stats were. 74% completion percentage, 1,900 passing yards, and he had 15 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and he missed a game and a half. He's not making a lot of mistakes. His passer rating's phenomenal. He's got a ton of great completion percentage. I know it's not against a sexy schedule, but if Indiana closes out and they finish undefeated, it's going to be a great storyline.
Yeah, that for Rourke, though, missing a game and a half, I just don't know how much it's going to affect him.
It might kill him. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Let me talk about Hunter very quickly before I get to the point I want to make in the things that you said here. Look, I feel like if you don't have him in your top 2, meaning Travis Hunter at minimum, it's like not voting for Shohei Ohtani when he was with the Angels and pitching and hitting. Yeah. It's like you're not going to vote that dude the MVP. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? He might be the best pitcher in the game. He might be the best hitter in the game. Like, what are we doing? Now, I don't know if Travis Hunter is the best DB and wide receiver in the game, but he's doing something that nobody else is doing. Okay, like he's a unicorn. I don't care what conference he's in. Joe, listen, I get it, but he can cover a DB. He's old school, bro. Like, this is insane. We might not see this again for a decade. 2 decades. Who knows?
Well, I don't think we're ever going to see it in the rest of our lives. I don't think that. Think about all the people who've been watching college football.
I'm not going to go that far.
But we haven't seen anything until this point.
I'm just not going to go that far.
Okay.
I can't go that far because I think it's more common now. Joe, that's why you have two-way players like Paul Skeens, who was a two-way player in college. Okay, like you have Shohei Ohtani, you have Travis Hunter. We're seeing this happen more and more and more and more in sports. Name the sport, right? Like, and for example, the athletic, like I'm watching it right here in front of my eyes. I'm not going to say the kid's name; it has no national relevance. But it's like, dude, what is going on? These guys that do two different things have been insane.
It absolutely has. And my only thing is that it requires a special kind of athlete to do what Travis Hunter's doing, to have the physical capability to withstand all the snaps, but also all the contact potentially that he's going to take. That's why I think he's unique and why he ultimately has the best case. And Shedeur Sanders has been phenomenal, and he certainly, I think, plays into the conversation as well. But the big reason why they're winning, and when they win big, it's because of Travis Hunter. It's because he's locked down on one side of the field, and he's also producing as a receiver. He is just such an incredible storyline, and it feels it's quick to knock in any hater that Colorado situation to find ways to poke holes into it. But he's just so unique. It's so different from anything that we can be exposed to.
Now, let me just make this very clear as we're wrapping this segment up here. In no way, like in no world am I at the current moment, if you made me pick today, based off of the games done today, Dillon Gabriel will win the Heisman for me. Just letting it be known. I mean, like, because number one, he does have the best win. I do think he has been the most consistent. Okay. I mean, Joe, I don't think that Travis Hunter alone can beat a team like Ohio State. Now, I'm not saying that Dillon Gabriel did that alone, but Joe, I mean, look at the caliber of team that he was flawless against. I mean, this dude was putting passes, like throwing dimes. Here's a hot take. I'm never the guy that gets quarterback Heisman Trophy fatigue. I'm a unicorn in that realm. You know how people are like, oh, they're just going to always give it to a quarterback. They're going to always give it to a quarterback. No, yeah, because that's how big that position's worth. Like, Joe, 76% completion percentage.
I mean, that's insane. That is,
by the way, the NFL, think about this. The NFL freaked out because Jaden Daniels was at 79. Like, people don't realize when you're getting above 75, Joe, the last quarterbacks that have done over 75% completion percentage throughout the season, who have they been? Caleb Williams 2 years ago when he went through a stretch where he's right at 72 to 75. Burrow, Lawrence, like that's what we're talking about here. Like as deadly accurate as those dudes were, that's where they set at. By the way, they all have the same amount of passing attempts. It's not like things are different. It's not like he's not tossing the ball around. The only thing is he's got more interceptions than those guys did, like at this point. But the bottom line is, Joe, he's darting dudes up, man.
It's worth bringing up. I think, though, that if we're going with the quarterback, it does have to be Cam Ward. Because, like, the plays that Cam Ward makes on film are not created.
Also fair.
They're not the same as what Dillon Gabriel is doing.
Fair. I mean, but Cam
Ward and Miami fans are going to say that you're a hater for that, by the way.
Okay. Again, to the Miami fans. Joe, who did I pick to win the Heisman? I said if you asked me today. You didn't ask. I don't vote on it today. Who did I pick to win the Heisman at the beginning of the season?
It's Cam Ward.
Okay. Losers. All right. We're out here. See y'all Sunday. Peace.